Captain Marcus Chen had seen many impossible things during his 15 years exploring the galaxy, but nothing prepared him for the sight before him. The massive alien fleet stretched across space like a dark ocean, their ships gleaming with technology that made Earth's finest vessels look like paper boats. Each ship was the size of a small moon, their hulls covered in strange symbols that seemed to shift and dance in the starlight. Marcus stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, humanity's most advanced warship, watching as his crew worked frantically at their stations. The red alert lights bathed everything in an ominous glow, and the constant beeping of warning systems filled the air like angry insects. Sweat dripped down his face despite the cool, recycled air of the bridge. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission," called out Lieutenant Sarah Hayes from the communication station. Her usually steady voice carried a tremor that Marcus had never heard before. "It's coming from the largest ship in their formation." Marcus straightened his uniform and ran a hand through his graying hair. Whatever message was coming, it would determine the fate of not just his crew, but possibly all of humanity. Earth had sent them on this mission to establish first contact with alien civilizations, but they had never expected to encounter something this overwhelming. "Put it through." "Lieutenant." The main view screen flickered and then displayed an image that made several crew members gasp. The alien who appeared was unlike anything in Earth's databases or wildest imaginings. She was tall and elegant, with skin that seemed to shimmer between silver and deep blue like moonlight on water. Her eyes were large and completely black, like looking into the depths of space itself. Most striking were the intricate patterns that covered her face and neck, glowing softly with an inner light that pulsed like a heartbeat. When she spoke, her voice was melodic yet commanding, carrying an authority that made every person on the bridge instinctively stand straighter. The universal translator worked perfectly, converting her alien language into clear English. "I am Empress Zithara of the Valdorian Empire," she said, her gaze seeming to look directly at Marcus even through the screen. "Your small vessel has entered our territory without permission. According to our laws, this is an act of war that demands immediate punishment." Marcus felt his mouth go dry. Behind him, he could hear the nervous shuffling of his crew and the quiet whispers of prayers. The weight of representing all of humanity pressed down on his shoulders like a mountain. He stepped forward, trying to project confidence he didn't feel. "Your Majesty, I am Captain Marcus Chen of the United Earth Starship Defiance. We come in peace, seeking to establish diplomatic relations between our peoples. We had no knowledge that this space belonged to your empire. If we have offended, we apologize and request safe passage back to our territory." The Empress studied him for a long moment, her alien features impossible to read. The silence stretched until Marcus could hear his own heartbeat thundering in his ears. Finally, she spoke again. "Your ignorance does not excuse your trespass, human. However, I am intrigued by your species. Our scouts have observed your homeworld and your primitive technology. The fact that you managed to travel this far with such limited capabilities shows remarkable determination." She paused, and Marcus caught a glimpse of something that might have been curiosity in those black eyes. "I will make you an offer, Captain Chen. Your ship and crew are completely at my mercy. My fleet could destroy you without effort, but I am feeling generous today. I will grant you one request. Anything within my power to give if you can prove to me that humanity deserves to continue existing." Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. Around him, the bridge fell into complete silence except for the humming of the ship's systems. The fate of humanity rested on his next words, and he had no idea what could possibly impress a being who commanded such vast power. "What kind of proof would satisfy you, Your Majesty?" he asked carefully. The Empress smiled, an expression that was both beautiful and terrifying on her alien features. "Tell me something about your species that I do not already know. Something that reveals the true nature of humanity. You have 1 hour to prepare your answer. Choose wisely, Captain. The lives of everyone on your world depend on it." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Marcus stared at the blank screen where the Empress had been, his mind racing. How could he possibly convince a being with such advanced technology and power that humanity was worth preserving? What could he say about human nature that would impress someone who had likely seen countless civilizations rise and fall? "Captain," came the voice of Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the ship's chief science officer. "Perhaps we should discuss what we know about human achievements. Our art, our literature, our scientific discoveries." Marcus shook his head slowly. "She said they've been observing Earth. They probably know all about our accomplishments. We need something else, something deeper. Commander James Park, his second-in-command, stepped forward. What about our capacity for growth? How we've overcome our destructive impulses? Have we, though? Marcus asked quietly. We still have wars, poverty, injustice. Why would that impress an advanced alien civilization? The hour began ticking away as the crew debated and suggested various aspects of humanity that might appeal to the Empress. Some suggested their resilience in the face of disasters, others their creativity and innovation, but Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that none of these things would be enough. As the minutes passed, he found himself thinking not about humanity's grand achievements, but about the smaller moments that defined what it meant to be human, the way his crew had volunteered for this dangerous mission, knowing they might never see home again, the countless acts of kindness and sacrifice that happened every day on Earth without fanfare or recognition. When the hour was nearly up, Marcus made his decision. He would not try to impress the Empress with humanity's accomplishments. Instead, he would show her something far more dangerous and valuable, the truth about what drove humans to reach for the stars despite their limitations. He opened a channel to the Empress's ship, not knowing that his words would change not only the fate of humanity, but the destiny of the entire galaxy. The communication channel opened, and once again Empress Zathara's commanding presence filled the view screen. Her black eyes seemed to pierce through Marcus as if she could read his very thoughts. The patterns on her skin pulsed with a slightly faster rhythm, perhaps indicating anticipation or amusement. "Your hour is complete, Captain Chen," she said, her melodic voice carrying across the bridge. "Have you prepared your answer? What truth about humanity do you believe will convince me to spare your species?" Marcus took a deep breath and stepped forward. He had decided to abandon any prepared speech or diplomatic language. If humanity was to be judged, it should be judged honestly. "Your Majesty, I won't lie to you about what we are. Humans are flawed, often violently so. We fight wars over resources, ideas, and sometimes just because we fear what we don't understand. We destroy our own environment and struggle with basic concepts like treating each other fairly. By almost any measure, we're probably not worth saving." Behind him, Marcus heard Dr. Rodriguez gasp softly. Commander Park shifted uncomfortably. This was not what anyone had expected him to say, but Marcus continued, his voice growing stronger. "But here's what I think makes us different and why we're sitting in space talking to you right now instead of hiding on our home planet. Humans don't give up. Ever. When we face something impossible, when every rational voice tells us to quit, we find a way to keep going. Not because we're particularly brave or smart, but because we can't help ourselves." The Empress leaned forward slightly, and Marcus caught what might have been interest in her expression. "My great-grandfather was a farmer who lost 3 crops in a row to drought," Marcus continued. "Any reasonable person would have moved away, found different work. Instead, he spent 4 years developing new irrigation techniques that ended up feeding thousands of people. My grandmother was told she was too poor and too female to become a doctor. She worked 3 jobs to pay for medical school and became one of the best surgeons on Earth." Marcus gestured to his crew around him. "Every person on this ship volunteered for a mission they knew was dangerous. We left Earth knowing we might never return, knowing our technology was primitive compared to what we might find out here. We came anyway because that's what humans do. We reach for things that are beyond our grasp." The patterns on the Empress's skin had slowed their pulsing, and she watched Marcus with an intensity that made the air feel charged. "But that's not even the most important thing about us," Marcus said. "The most important thing is what happens when we fail. Because we do fail constantly. We make terrible mistakes that cost lives and destroy precious things. And then we get back up and try to do better." Marcus thought about Earth's history, the wars, the environmental damage, the countless injustices that humans had inflicted on each other. But he also thought about the movements for peace, the environmental restoration projects, the gradual expansion of rights and freedoms that had taken centuries to achieve. "We don't just adapt to our environment, Your Majesty. We adapt ourselves. When we realized our planet was dying, we didn't just accept it. We changed how we live. When we discovered we weren't alone in the universe, we didn't hide. We built ships and came looking for you." The Empress was silent for a long moment, her alien features impossible to read. When she spoke again, her voice carried a note Marcus hadn't heard before. "And what makes you believe this quality will serve you well among the stars, Captain? The galaxy is vast and dangerous. There are civilizations out here that have conquered thousands of worlds, species that view humans as nothing more than interesting specimens. Marcus felt a chill at her words, but he pressed on. Because we've never met a challenge that stopped us permanently. We might lose battles, even lose badly, but we'll learn from every defeat and come back stronger. And eventually we'll find a way to win, or at least find a way to keep existing, on our own terms. You speak of your species with great confidence for someone whose ship I could destroy. With a single command, the Empress observed. I'm not confident we'll win, Marcus admitted. I'm confident we'll try, and keep trying. That's all we know how to do. For the first time since the conversation began, the Empress smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her alien features into something almost warm. Interesting, she said. In all my centuries of ruling, I have encountered many species. Some were powerful, some were wise, some were numerous, but few were stubborn in quite the way you describe. She stood from what Marcus now realized was a throne, revealing her full height and the intricate ceremonial armor she wore. The metal seemed to flow like liquid while maintaining its shape, and symbols moved across its surface like living things. I had already decided to spare your species. Captain Chen, she said, causing gasps of relief throughout the bridge. Your answer merely confirmed my decision. But now I am curious about something else. Marcus felt his knees nearly buckle with relief, but he maintained his composure. What would you like to know, Your Majesty? I am prepared to grant you the request I promised. Anything within my power. My empire spans 3,000 star systems. I command technologies your species won't develop for millennia. I could give you faster-than-light travel, unlimited energy, weapons that could protect Earth from any threat, knowledge that would advance your civilization by thousands of years. The bridge fell completely silent. Marcus could practically hear the wheels turning in every crew member's head. Any of those gifts could transform humanity's future, could solve problems that had plagued Earth for generations. So tell me, Captain Chen, the Empress continued, what do you desire most for your species? Marcus opened his mouth to ask for the faster-than-light technology. It seemed like the most practical choice. But then he stopped. Something in the way the Empress was watching him, the slight curve of her smile, made him think this was another test, not of humanity's worthiness, but of something else entirely. He studied her face, looking for clues about what she really wanted to hear. There was something almost playful in her expression, despite the formal words. And suddenly Marcus realized that this entire conversation had been leading to this moment. The Empress wasn't just offering him anything. She was waiting for him to ask for something specific. But what? Marcus studied the Empress's face carefully, noting the subtle changes in her expression. There was definitely something playful there, almost teasing. The way she had phrased her offer, the emphasis on anything within my power, seemed deliberate. But what was she expecting him to ask for? Your Majesty, Marcus said slowly. Before I make my request, may I ask you something? The Empress raised what might have been an eyebrow, though the feature was more elegant and angular than any human equivalent. You wish to question me? How refreshingly bold. Very well, ask. You said you've observed our species, studied our world. You knew about our technology, our capabilities, but this conversation suggests you know much more than that. You understand something about human nature that goes beyond simple observation. The patterns on her skin began pulsing in a different rhythm, faster and more complex. Marcus got the distinct impression she was pleased with his perception. Continue, she said simply. I think this entire encounter was planned, Marcus said, feeling more confident as the pieces fell into place. Your fleet didn't just happen to be here when we arrived. You were waiting for us or for someone like us. The question is why. Behind him, Marcus heard Commander Park whisper, "What is he doing?" But he ignored it. His instincts told him he was on the right track. The Empress laughed, a sound like silver bells mixed with distant thunder. Perceptive, Captain. Yes, we have been monitoring your species' progress for some time. We knew approximately when you would develop interstellar capability and mapped the most likely routes your first deep space missions would take. But why? Dr. Rodriguez called out from her station. Why go to such lengths to encounter us? The Empress's attention shifted to the science officer, and Marcus saw something almost sad in those black eyes. Because, Dr. Rodriguez, my empire is dying, not from war or disease or natural disaster, but from something far worse, stagnation. She gestured toward the view screen, and the image changed to show the interior of her flagship. It was magnificent beyond description, with soaring architecture that seemed to defy physics and technology that hummed with barely contained power. But Marcus noticed something troubling. The few aliens he could see moved with a kind of listless precision, like highly sophisticated robots following predetermined patterns. "We achieved perfection 10,000 years ago," the Empress continued. "Perfect technology, perfect society, perfect peace. We eliminated struggle, challenge, uncertainty. Our people want for nothing, fear nothing, strive for nothing." The view screen returned to her image, and Marcus could see the weight of centuries in her posture. "Do you understand what perfection costs, Captain? It costs the very thing you described about humanity. The drive to keep pushing forward despite the odds. When there are no more problems to solve, no more mountains to climb, no more impossibilities to attempt, what reason is there to continue existing?" Marcus began to understand. "You're looking for something your people lost." "Precisely. We have watched countless species rise and fall across the galaxy. Most follow the same pattern. They achieve technological advancement, create peaceful societies, and then slowly fade away as their curiosity dies. But occasionally, very rarely, we encounter a species that maintains what we call the spark, the refusal to accept limitations." She leaned forward, and her voice took on an intensity that made the air itself seem to vibrate. "Your species fascinates us because you have that spark in abundance. Despite your primitive technology, despite your social problems, despite facing challenges that would crush most civilizations, you continue reaching for the stars. You embody everything we have lost." The pieces were falling into place now. Marcus understood why she had tested him, why she had offered him anything he wanted. This wasn't about rewarding humanity. It was about finding something her own people desperately needed. "What exactly are you hoping to gain from us?" he asked. "That depends on what you request, Captain. I told you I would grant anything within my power. I meant that literally, but I confess I am hoping for a particular answer." Marcus felt his pulse quicken. The game had changed completely. This wasn't just about humanity's survival anymore. It was about forming some kind of relationship with the most powerful empire in the galaxy. The wrong choice could doom both species to different kinds of death. "Your Majesty," he said carefully, "I think I understand what you're hoping I'll ask for, but I need to know more about your intentions. Are you looking for us to be subjects? Allies? Something else?" The Empress smiled again, and this time Marcus was certain he saw approval in her expression. "What would you prefer, Captain?" It was another test, Marcus realized. She was evaluating not just what humans wanted, but how they approached relationships with more powerful beings. Would they grovel for scraps? Demand equality they couldn't possibly enforce? Or would they find some other path? Marcus thought about human history, how they had dealt with encounters between radically different cultures and power levels. Sometimes it had gone well, but often it had been disastrous. The key seemed to be mutual respect and benefit. But how could humanity offer anything valuable to beings with such advanced technology? Then he remembered what the Empress had just told him. They had perfect technology but had lost something irreplaceable. Humanity had exactly what they needed, not despite their limitations, but because of them. "Your Majesty," Marcus said, his decision crystallizing, "I think you're hoping I'll ask for something that benefits both our species equally. Something that could restore what your people have lost while helping humanity grow. And what might that be?" Marcus took a deep breath. What he was about to propose was either brilliant or completely insane. "Possibly both. I think you're hoping I'll ask for you." The bridge fell into stunned silence. Dr. Rodriguez dropped her tablet. Commander Park made a choking sound. Even the steady hum of the ship's system seemed to pause. The Empress stared at Marcus for what felt like an eternity, her alien features completely unreadable. Then slowly, her expression transformed into the most genuine smile he had yet seen. "Explain what you mean by that, Captain Chen." Marcus felt the weight of every eye on the bridge as he prepared to explain what might be the most audacious request in human history. The Empress waited with perfect stillness, but the patterns on her skin were pulsing rapidly now, betraying what might have been anticipation or amusement. "Your Majesty," Marcus began, "you've told me that your empire achieved perfection at the cost of losing the drive to grow and explore. Your people have everything they could want, but they've lost the spark that makes existence meaningful." He gestured toward his own crew, who were still staring at him in various states of shock and concern. "Humans have the opposite problem. We have all the drive and curiosity in the universe, but we lack the knowledge and resources to safely explore it. We're like children reaching for dangerous toys, enthusiastic but likely to hurt ourselves. The Empress nodded slowly. An interesting analogy. Continue. What if the solution isn't for you to give us technology, or for us to try to teach you something you've forgotten? What if the answer is for us to learn and grow together? Marcus took a step closer to the view screen, his confidence building as the idea took shape in his mind. I'm asking for you, Your Majesty, because I think you need to experience what we experience. Not observe it from a distance, not study it through reports, but live it. Come with us. Leave your perfect empire behind and help us explore the galaxy. With our imperfect, stubborn, completely irrational human approach to the impossible. Behind him, Marcus heard Dr. Rodriguez whisper, "Oh my God, he's asking the Empress of a galactic empire to basically go on a road trip with us." The Empress heard it too, and laughed, a sound so rich and delighted that it seemed to make the very air sparkle. Dr. Rodriguez has an amusing way of summarizing complex diplomatic proposals, she said. But Captain Chen, what you're suggesting is not a simple matter. I have responsibilities to my empire, to my people. I cannot simply abandon them to satisfy my curiosity about your species. I'm not asking you to abandon them, Marcus said quickly. I'm asking you to save them. You said yourself that perfection is killing your civilization. Maybe what they need isn't a ruler who maintains perfect order, but an explorer who rediscovers what it means to face the unknown. The view screen shifted again, showing a vast city that stretched beyond the horizon. The architecture was breathtaking, spires that seemed to touch the clouds, gardens that floated in midair, transportation systems that moved like choreographed dancers. But Marcus noticed the same thing he had seen before. The people moved without passion, without urgency, without the chaotic energy that characterized human settlements. Look at them, the Empress said softly. They are content, safe, fulfilled in every way we can measure. They live for thousands of years, create beautiful art, pursue knowledge and pleasure. By every objective standard, they have achieved paradise. But they're not alive, Marcus said gently. Not in the way that matters. They're existing perfectly, but they're not living. The Empress was quiet for a long moment, studying the image of her capital city. When she spoke again, her voice carried a note of vulnerability that hadn't been there before. I have ruled for over 3,000 years, Captain. I have guided my people through the transition from warfare to peace, from scarcity to abundance, from uncertainty to security. I have given them everything they could ever want or need. She turned back to face Marcus directly. And in doing so, I may have given them the most terrible gift of all, a life without meaning. Commander Park stepped forward, unable to contain himself any longer. Your Majesty, with respect, how could traveling with us possibly help? We have one small ship, limited resources, and we're complete novices at interstellar exploration. The Empress smiled at him with what looked like genuine fondness. Commander Park, that is precisely why it would help. When was the last time I faced a problem I couldn't solve with overwhelming technology? When did I last experience genuine uncertainty about the outcome of any endeavor? She gestured to encompass Marcus's entire crew. When did I last work alongside people who approach challenges with hope instead of calculated probability? Your limitations are exactly what I need to remember what it feels like to be alive. Dr. Rodriguez had recovered her tablet and was frantically taking notes. But Your Majesty, the cultural exchange alone would be unprecedented. The scientific collaboration, the philosophical implications. Dr. Rodriguez, the Empress interrupted, with amusement. You sound as excited about this possibility as I feel. That emotion you're experiencing right now, that's what my people have forgotten how to feel. Marcus realized they were at a crucial moment. The Empress was genuinely considering his request, but she still hadn't agreed. There had to be something holding her back. Your Majesty, he said carefully, what are your concerns about this arrangement? What would it take to make it possible? The patterns on her skin shifted to a deeper, more complex rhythm. Several things, Captain. First, I would need to ensure my empire's stability in my absence. That can be arranged. I have capable advisors who can manage day-to-day affairs. She began counting on her elongated fingers. Second, I would need guarantees about the nature of this collaboration. I will not be a passive observer or a source of advanced technology for you to exploit. This must be a genuine partnership. Agreed, Marcus said immediately. We want to learn from each other, not use each other. Third, the Empress continued, I would need to understand the scope and duration of this expedition. Are we talking about a brief cultural exchange or something more substantial? Marcus looked around at his crew, seeing a mixture of excitement, terror, and amazement on their faces. This conversation had gone so far beyond anything they had prepared for that they were all basically improvising at this point. Your Majesty, he said, I think we're talking about something that has never been attempted before in the history of either of our species. We're talking about creating something new together. Not human, not Valdorian, but something that combines the best of both. The Empress was silent for a long moment, and Marcus held his breath. Finally, she spoke. Captain Chen, your request is the most extraordinary thing anyone has asked of me in over a millennium. It is also the most intriguing. She paused, and Marcus felt his heart hammering against his ribs. I accept. The silence that followed the Empress's acceptance stretched for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds. Marcus felt his knees go weak with relief, excitement, and the sudden terrifying realization of what he had just accomplished. Behind him, he could hear his crew members talking in whispered, rapid conversations. She said yes. Dr. Rodriguez whispered to Commander Park. The Empress of a galactic empire just agreed to come exploring with us in our tiny ship. This is either the greatest diplomatic success in human history or the most spectacular disaster waiting to happen. Park whispered back. The Empress seemed to hear their exchange and smiled with what Marcus was learning to recognize as her genuine amusement. Dr. Rodriguez, Commander Park, your concerns are noted and entirely reasonable. Perhaps we should discuss the practical arrangements. Marcus stepped forward, trying to regain his composure and remember that he was supposed to be a professional starship captain, not a human who had just made the most impulsive request in galactic history. Your Majesty, we're honored by your acceptance, but I have to admit we hadn't planned for this possibility. Our ship is designed for a crew of 50 humans, not for hosting galactic royalty. Captain Chen, the Empress said with a tone that suggested she was enjoying his discomfort far more than was strictly diplomatic. I have spent the last 3,000 years living in perfect comfort surrounded by every luxury imaginable. I think experiencing human accommodations will be precisely the kind of challenge I need. She gestured, and the view screen split to show both her image and what appeared to be technical specifications for her flagship. However, there are some practical considerations. My physiology is different from yours. I require different atmospheric conditions, different nutrition, and I'm considerably taller than your average human. We will need to make some modifications to your vessel. Dr. Rodriguez perked up immediately. We can handle atmospheric adjustments, and our food synthesizers are quite adaptable. How tall are you exactly, Your Majesty? In your measurements, approximately 8 feet. And please, if we are to be traveling companions, call me Zithera. The constant formalities will become tiresome during a long voyage. Marcus felt another wave of unreality wash over him. He was having a casual conversation with an 8-foot-tall alien empress who had just agreed to abandon her empire to go exploring with humans. If he survived this experience, no one on Earth would ever believe his reports. Zithara, he said, testing the name. It felt strange on his tongue, but not unpleasant. What about your fleet? Will they be accompanying us? Absolutely not, she said firmly. The entire point is to experience genuine uncertainty and challenge. Traveling with a fleet of vessels that could defeat most galactic civilizations would rather undermine that goal. Commander Park looked alarmed. But Your Majesty, Zithara, without your fleet's protection, how do we know other hostile species won't attack us? Zithara's smile took on a slightly predatory quality. Commander, you seem to assume I am defenseless without my ships. I assure you I did not become Empress of the Valdorian Empire through pure diplomacy. She raised one hand, and Marcus watched in fascination as her skin began to glow more brightly. The patterns that covered her arms shifted and moved, rearranging themselves into new configurations. The air around her hand shimmered, and Marcus got the distinct impression that she was demonstrating only a tiny fraction of her personal capabilities. Additionally, she continued as the glow faded, I will not be traveling entirely alone. I will bring my personal guard, Cathara, and my advisor, Mirren. 2 additional beings should not strain your accommodation significantly. Your Majesty, Dr. Rodriguez said hesitantly, what about your empire while you're gone? Who will rule in your absence? I have a council of advisors who have been managing increasingly more of the day-to-day governance over the past few centuries, Zythara explained. They are perfectly capable of maintaining order in my absence. In fact, they may discover that they are more capable than they believed, another form of growth through challenge. Marcus was starting to understand that Zythara had thought this through, far more carefully than her spontaneous acceptance had suggested. This wasn't an impulsive decision. She had been planning for this possibility, maybe for years. How long have you been considering something like this? He asked. Approximately 200 years, she admitted, ever since our sociologists concluded that our civilization was entering terminal stagnation. We needed a catalyst, something to reintroduce uncertainty and growth. When we began observing your species more closely, I realized you might be exactly what we needed. So this entire encounter was orchestrated, yes. But Captain, your responses were not predetermined. You could have asked for technology, for weapons, for riches. You could have tried to establish humanity as clients or vassals of my empire. The fact that you asked for partnership, for mutual growth, tells me that my instincts about your species were correct. Lieutenant Hayes had been quietly monitoring communications during the conversation, and now she spoke up. Captain, I'm receiving multiple transmissions from the Valdorian fleet. It sounds like they're confused about their Empress's decision. Zythara laughed. I imagine they are. Mirren is probably having what you humans call a heart attack, and my military commanders are likely planning contingencies for every possible disaster. Put them through, Lieutenant. The view screen split again, showing Zythara on one side and 2 other Valdorians on the other. One was clearly a military officer. His bearing was unmistakably martial despite his alien appearance. The other wore robes that seemed to be made of living light and carried himself with the dignity of high office. Both were speaking rapidly in their own language, clearly agitated. Zythara listened patiently for a moment, then responded in what sounded like calm, measured tones. The conversation continued for several minutes, with the other Valdorians becoming increasingly animated while Zythara remained serene. Finally, she switched back to English for the benefit of Marcus's crew. General Thys, Advisor Mirren, please switch to the human language so our new allies can understand the discussion. The military officer, General Thys, immediately began speaking in accented but clear English. Your Majesty, this plan is madness. These humans have no understanding of the dangers in unexplored space. Their technology is primitive, their ship is fragile, and their experience is minimal. You could be killed, captured, or worse. Advisor Mirren nodded emphatically. Your Majesty, the Empire needs your guidance. There are decisions that only you can make, crises that require your wisdom. How can you abandon your responsibilities for this adventure? Zythara listened to their concerns with patience, but Marcus could see something in her expression hardening. Not anger, but determination. General Advisor, she said finally, your concerns are noted and appreciated. However, you have both missed the most important point. She stood from her throne, revealing her full imposing height. I am not abandoning my responsibilities. I am fulfilling them. Zythara's declaration hung in the air like a challenge. General Thys and Advisor Mirren exchanged glances that clearly said they thought their Empress had lost her mind. Marcus found himself holding his breath as he watched this family argument play out on a galactic scale. Your Majesty, Advisor Mirren said carefully, I fear I do not understand how abandoning the Empire constitutes fulfilling your duties to it. Zythara moved closer to her view screen, and Marcus could see the passion burning in her black eyes. This was not the detached, perfect ruler she had first appeared to be. This was someone who had been suppressing her true nature for millennia. Mirren, in the past century, how many significant decisions have required my personal intervention? The advisor paused, clearly running calculations in his head. Very few, Your Majesty. Perhaps a dozen matters of genuine importance. And how many of those could the Council have handled adequately without me? Another pause, longer this time. Most of them, Your Majesty. General Thys, Zithera continued, when did our military last face a genuine challenge? When did you last need to develop new tactics, new strategies, new ways of thinking? The general's expression grew troubled. Not for several centuries, Your Majesty. Our superiority is so complete that most potential conflicts end before they begin. Do you see the problem? Zithera asked, her voice growing more intense. We have become so perfect, so powerful, so completely in control that we have stopped growing. We have stopped learning. We have stopped living. Marcus watched this exchange with growing fascination. Zithera was making the case for why leaving was exactly what her empire needed, not just for her personal growth, but for the health of her entire civilization. But Your Majesty, General Thys protested, what if a crisis arises that truly requires your leadership? Then they will handle it, Zithera said simply, and in doing so they will discover capabilities they never knew they possessed. Mirren, you have been my advisor for 800 years. You know my thoughts, my methods, my priorities better than anyone. You can guide the council through any challenge they might face. She turned her attention to the general. Thus, your forces haven't fought a real battle in 3 centuries, but they train constantly for threats that never come. Perhaps it's time they learn to think creatively, rather than relying on overwhelming force. Dr. Rodriguez had been listening intently to this conversation, and now she spoke up. Your Majesty, Zithera, are you saying that your entire empire might benefit from you stepping back? Precisely, Dr. Rodriguez. Sometimes the best thing a leader can do is create space for others to lead. By removing myself from the equation, I force my people to rediscover their own strength and creativity. Advisor Mirren looked like he wanted to argue further, but then his expression changed. Marcus could almost see the moment when understanding dawned. You're not just seeking personal growth, Mirren said slowly. You're attempting to shock the entire empire out of stagnation. Now you begin to understand, Zithera said with satisfaction. If the Empress can abandon perfection to seek growth, perhaps others will feel permission to do the same. Commander Park had been unusually quiet during this exchange, but now he stepped forward. Zithera, what happens if this experiment fails? What if working with us doesn't give you what you're looking for? Zithera considered the question seriously. Then I will have learned something valuable about the nature of growth and stagnation. That knowledge itself will be worth the risk. General Thys was still not convinced. Your Majesty, even if we accept the philosophical benefits of this plan, the practical risks remain enormous. These humans are exploring unknown space with primitive technology. The probability of encountering hostile forces is extremely high. General, Marcus interjected, I appreciate your concern for Zithera's safety, but I have to point out that she just demonstrated she has personal defensive capabilities that probably exceed our ship's weapon systems, and we're not planning to pick fights with hostile aliens. Captain Chen raises an excellent point, Zithera said. I am not as vulnerable as you imagine, and more importantly, the goal is not to avoid all risk, but to experience meaningful risk, the kind that requires growth, adaptation, and creative thinking. Lieutenant Hayes looked up from her communications console. Captain, I'm receiving a priority transmission from Earth Command. They want a status report. Marcus felt his stomach drop. How exactly was he supposed to explain this situation to his superiors? Admiral, our first contact mission was successful. The aliens didn't destroy us, and oh, by the way, the Empress of their galactic empire is coming back to Earth with us to learn about humanity. What should I tell them, Captain? Hayes asked. Tell them. Marcus paused, realizing that his entire career, possibly his entire life, was about to change beyond recognition. Tell them we've established diplomatic contact and are returning with a cultural exchange delegation. That's certainly one way to describe it, Zithera said with obvious amusement. Advisor Mirren had been consulting what appeared to be a complex holographic display. Your Majesty, if you are determined to proceed with this plan, we will need to establish communication protocols, emergency procedures, and contingency plans. Agreed, Zithera said. We will also need to prepare my ship for extended autonomous operation. The Council will need access to all Imperial databases and decision-making protocols. Marcus watched this conversation with growing amazement. What had started as humanity's first contact with aliens was turning into the most significant political and cultural event in galactic history. An immortal Empress was abandoning her perfect empire to learn about mortality and struggle from humans. Zithera, he said, I have to ask, aren't you afraid? You're giving up everything familiar, everything certain, to travel into the unknown with a species you've only just met. Zithara turned to look at him directly, and her expression was radiant with an emotion Marcus had never seen on her face before. Pure, undiluted excitement. "Captain Chen," she said, "I have not felt fear in over 2,000 years. The prospect of experiencing it again is one of the most appealing aspects of this entire arrangement." She gestured to encompass both the humans on the bridge and her own advisors on the view screen. "We are about to embark on the greatest experiment in galactic history. We are going to discover whether perfection can learn from imperfection, whether immortality can gain wisdom from mortality, whether an ancient civilization can rediscover what it means to be young." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine as he realized the full magnitude of what they were attempting. This wasn't just a cultural exchange or a diplomatic mission. This was potentially the beginning of a new form of civilization, one that combined human resilience with alien wisdom, human creativity with alien knowledge. "When do we start?" he asked. Zithara smiled. "Immediately, Captain. I find I have no patience left for delay." 6 months later, Marcus stood on the observation deck of the UES Defiance, watching the swirling colors of hyperspace flow past the reinforced windows. The ship barely resembled its original configuration. Valdorian technology had been seamlessly integrated with human engineering, creating something that was truly new. More importantly, it was something that neither species could have created alone. The door behind him whispered open, and he didn't need to turn around to know who had entered. Over the past months, he had learned to recognize Zithara's presence. By the subtle way the air seemed to become more alive when she was near. "Still contemplating the philosophical implications of our experiment?" she asked, moving to stand beside him. She had to stoop slightly to look out the human-sized window, but she never complained about such inconveniences. "Among other things," Marcus admitted, "I was actually thinking about how wrong my initial assumptions were about you." Zithara tilted her head, a gesture she had picked up from observing humans. Her own people's body language was more subtle, more controlled. "How so?" "When we first met, I thought you were this perfect immortal being who had everything figured out. I was so focused on trying to impress you that I almost missed what you were really looking for." "And what was I really looking for?" Marcus smiled. "A friend. Someone to explore the universe with. Someone to be genuinely surprised by." Zithara laughed, a sound that had become as familiar as his own crew's voices. "Captain Chen, you continue to demonstrate why humans are such remarkable creatures. You see things that others miss." Through the window, Marcus could see their destination approaching, a star system that their combined sensors had detected anomalous energy readings from. It was exactly the kind of mystery that would have terrified humanity 6 months ago. Now, with Valdorian knowledge and human curiosity working together, it was simply the next adventure. "Your Majesty," came Dr. Rodriguez's voice over the intercom, "we're ready to drop out of hyperspace whenever you give the word." Marcus had noticed that the crew still used formal address with Zithara during official duties, even though she had become simply Zithara during their off-duty interactions. It was one of those compromises that somehow worked perfectly. "What do you think?" Marcus asked. "Ready for another impossible challenge?" "Always," Zithara replied without hesitation. They made their way to the bridge, where Marcus found his crew working alongside Zithara's companions with an efficiency that still amazed him. Cathara, Zithara's personal guard, was consulting with Commander Park about defensive strategies. Her warrior's instincts had proven invaluable in several dangerous situations, while Park's human tactical creativity had shown her new ways to approach old problems. Miran, Zithara's advisor, was deep in conversation with Dr. Rodriguez about the energy readings they had detected. The combination of Valdorian analytical precision with human intuitive leaps had led to insights that neither could have achieved alone. "All stations report ready, Captain," Lieutenant Hayes announced. "Drop us out of hyperspace, Lieutenant." The familiar sensation of returning to normal space washed over the ship, and the main view screen filled with an image that made everyone fall silent. Before them hung a massive structure that defied easy description. Part space station, part city, part something entirely beyond either human or Valdorian experience. Energy cascaded across its surface in patterns that seemed almost alive. "Well," Marcus said after a moment, "this is new." "Captain," Dr. Rodriguez called out, excitement clear in her voice, "I'm reading at least 17 different types of technology integrated into that structure. Some of it matches Valdorian patterns, some resembles human engineering principles, but most of it is completely unknown." Zithara moved to her preferred position near the main view screen, studying the readings with intense concentration. "This is impossible," she said quietly. "That structure shows evidence of technologies from at least a dozen different species, including several that my empire classified as extinct centuries ago." "Maybe they're not as extinct as you thought," Cathera suggested from her tactical station. Commander Park was running threat assessments. "Whatever it is, it's not showing any hostile intent. In fact, I'm reading what might be docking bays. Almost like it's inviting visitors. Or welcoming them home," Mirren added thoughtfully. "Captain, Zithara, I believe we may have discovered something unprecedented." Marcus felt that familiar human sensation of being faced with something far beyond his understanding, and the equally familiar human response of wanting to investigate it anyway. He looked at Zithara and saw the same excitement burning in her eyes. "Zithara, your call. Do we dock with the mysterious alien megastructure of unknown origin? Or do we take the sensible approach and call for backup?" Zithara's smile was radiant. "Captain, what would be the point of learning to live dangerously if we chose the sensible option at the first real opportunity?" "I was hoping you'd say that," Marcus grinned. "Hayes, open a communication channel. Let's see if anyone's home." As the communications array activated, Marcus reflected on the strange journey that had brought them here. He had asked for the impossible, the partnership of the most powerful being in the galaxy. What he had received was something far more valuable. A friend who had taught him that growth never ended, no matter how long you lived or how much you achieved. The view screen crackled to life, and a new voice filled the bridge. One that spoke, in harmonious tones that seemed to come from multiple throats at once. "Welcome, travelers, to the confluence. We have been waiting for you." Marcus and Zithara exchanged glances, and he saw his own excitement reflected in her alien features. "I get the feeling," Marcus said quietly, "that our real adventure is just beginning." "Captain," Zithara replied, "I certainly hope so." As the UES Defiance moved toward the docking bays of the Impossible Station, Marcus realized that his impulsive request had led to something neither he nor Zithara could have imagined. They had not just found a partnership between human and Valdorian. They had discovered that the galaxy was full of others who, like them, refused to accept limitations. The universe, it turned out, was much larger and more wonderful than anyone had dared to dream, and they were going to explore every impossible inch of it together.